Welcome to the Sports Playbook, where we discuss solutions to issues that impact sports. I'm your host, Angela Hayslett. Today's guest is Ray Ellington, the General Manager and Operations Director of Horizons Edge Sports Campus. Today, we're going to discuss Sportsplex risks, strategies for success. Let's get to it. Welcome, Ray. Thank you for joining us today on the Sports Playbook.
Hey, Angela. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. Horizons Edge Sports Campus is a 50-acre sports complex that provides the community with access to basketball courts, indoor and outdoor turf fields, and more. So what are some of the key challenges in managing your sports facility?
Yeah, key challenge is always when you have as many patrons as we do on a regular basis is several things. One is kind of the theme of this show is trying to keep them safe as much as possible and make sure their experience is one that's at a high standard, not only of their enjoyment, but their feeling of having a warm, welcome environment that they can feel like they can thrive in and not have any worries.
And what has been your most popular sport that you offer that patrons have really engaged with at your facility?
So we're primarily built for our hardwood and turf. So soccer and basketball are definitely our top two most popular sports, with volleyball a close third.
So you have the turf, you have the hardwood surfaces. And tell me a little bit more about some of the challenges in maintaining this. So some of this is indoors, right? And then you also have an outdoor turf as well. Talk to me about some of those challenges with maintaining these spaces.
Yeah, so from just a general maintenance standpoint, is just staying on top of it and making sure that we keep it clean and those kind of things, and free of debris and trash and any spill or anything like that could affect someone's or affect one of the surfaces' playability. The other piece is environmentally, we have to keep the indoor surfaces, especially the hardwoods, at a certain humidity level and temperature in order to maintain the wood itself, and so that we prevent buckling or any kind of deformity that would also lead to some sort of hazard during the flow of play.
That would be a really costly replacement or repair, I'd imagine, if you have some challenges there with not maintaining that space very well. What about slip and falls or patrons getting into fights? Tell me about managing the people that come into your facility.
Yeah, so we try as best we can to have one kind of point of entrance and point of exit, other than the safety exits, of course, during a fire or some sort of emergency situation. But as far as maintaining the flow of our guests, we like to have one entry point so that we know who's in the building. We meet them and greet them at the front desk. Oftentimes we use a system where we put bands on them, or bracelets, so that we know that they have checked in that particular day, based on the color coding that we use for that particular day or event. And then we're able to just kind of make sure that by going around and doing checks on a regular basis, that those people are supposed to be there, that they haven't snuck in somewhere, and that we know the people, and we know who's in the building. What was the last part of your question?
So just maintaining the people that come in there and managing those. So people, you mentioned security when they're getting in, knowing who's in the building, but also what about the behavior of patrons? Yeah. A lot of times there's a little excitement when it comes to sports, and people are very passionate about that. So how do you kind of manage both adults and youth who are coming to your facility to play these really competitive games?
Yeah, so we start with just them having a set of expectations and rules, and not just facility rules, but the way we expect them to behave when they're playing a certain sport or participating in a certain league, so that we have something to fall back on in case they do break one of those rules. They understand that was an expectation to begin with. So we would remove them from the league or from that activity. So hopefully they don't do it to begin with, right? So they kind of know up front what the expectations are. Now, should they get to a point where, as you said, they get pretty passionate and they disagree with the call maybe, or they just are kind of both going for a loose ball, or they're getting too bit under the basket going for a rebound or something, sometimes it'll turn into trash talk. So we train our officials and our staff to get in there as soon as possible and just talk to the teams and say just a gentle reminder that hey, we're here to have fun, and the expectations are that we won't get out of control. Now there are times when that happens, and so we train our staff, and we also have security on site depending on the event that can then step in and take it to the next level, which may involve 911 or some sort of security services from outside of the building.
Yeah. So what type of events do you require security for? Are there certain events that are more high risk?
Yeah, so we have gotten to the point, industry-wide standard really, to have security, a standard practice is to have security present at basketball events, because that tends to be close quarters and a lot of physical play, and just more things tend to happen in those events. And so we have started requiring event owners to have to pay for and have security present from a third-party vendor that we recommend.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, because you opened your doors during a very unusual time, just prior to the pandemic starting. So January 2020 was your grand opening. COVID shutdowns, as we all know, happened a couple months later. Talk to me about making it through, just as you open your doors and you're getting your feet underneath you. What was that like for your organization?
Yeah, it was a time where it was a lot of uncertainty, and we didn't know what the next steps would be. And of course, having to we shut our doors for 3 months out of precaution, like a lot of places did. But then understanding that there's ways to still do certain things within a sport atmosphere that doesn't require close contact, and we've developed what we call the safety team. That they wore a certain uniform T-shirt, so patrons would know who to come to if there were any issues with people not wearing masks, or if there was anything that looked like it needed to be touched up or cleaned. But they were constantly going around with sanitizing solution, and touching up all surfaces that could be touched by anyone that was in the building. We would switch balls out pretty often if it was something like basketball and there was going to be any sort of passing drills or things like that. But we developed ways. We even had a couple of rules that we instituted as we got further, and it became a little more understanding within the general public that things were getting safer. We still developed a couple of rules that were adopted by several other basketball event owners throughout the state, that had to do with proximity of players during free throw situations or things like that in basketball. So we just try to be creative, and safety first, but just try to be creative so that we could get people out and active again.
Yeah, sounds like you were making some groundbreaking decisions at a time when people hadn't previously had to make plans for the health of teams and players. And I know you host multiple youth day camps for basketball, volleyball, and multi activities. Talk to me a little bit about the process that you have to go through to get these youth camps approved by the state.
Yeah, so that's new this year. We've always had, so we're affiliated with Camp Horizons here in Harrisonburg. So we've always kind of had that follow those industry standards when it came to camps, and understanding how critical it is to make sure the kids are in a safe environment, and the staff is well trained to make sure that not only do the kids stay safe, but they're there to protect each other in certain situations when things arise. But this year, the state of Virginia has created a few other standards that we've had to follow that have to do with background checks of employees. So we do background checks anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal for us. But there were some other standards and certifications that are in specialized classes that some of us have had to attend, especially our youth program coordinator, to make sure that everyone understands how to manage kids and keep them safe in general. Some things that had to do with birth certificates and immunization records and things like that as well.
Very interesting.
It's almost more like a preschool, like sending your kid to preschool almost. It's more of that standard. It's what it seems like that they've moved forward, rather than just dropping them off at camp.
Let's talk about that a little bit because you're kind of taking temporary custody of these children, and why their parents drop them off and they come back and pick them up and expect their children to be well cared for.
That's right.
So, talk to me about that process. What kind of policies and procedures do you have in place to make sure the kids are safe when they're in your care?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head as far as the standard of care. Like the parents, and I am one, and so are you, that we're handing our children over to someone else and we expect the same kind of care that we would provide them, or safe space. And some of the things that we do, just in general, we've always done is check in and check out procedures where there's a short list of people that are allowed to pick up the child, and they have to sign the child out with one of our staff members that's trained to ensure that they're going home with the right person. And then there's other standards when it comes to lost child procedures. Like there's times when they might wander off because they're curious about something else in the facility, and so we have procedures in place that we're able to try and locate the child as quickly as possible. And if it has to be escalated, we have procedures in place as well, emergency action plans, where we can shut down the campus and involve authorities if we need to.
Yeah, and one of the strategies is I've seen that you limit the ages of people that can participate in your camps and kind of be dropped off and left alone. Is that how do you determine that what the minimum age is for a kid to participate?
Yeah, we've kind of piggybacked off of what camp does. So 6-year-olds, and some of that has to do with just the child being able to care for itself in a bathroom situation and things like that. And being toilet. We don't want to get into changing diapers and toilet trained and those kind of things. So we've decided to start with the appropriate ages where they're kind of out of diaper, so to speak. And then once you get to 13, 14 years old, we'd love to see you participate in more of the sports specific camps and some of those things. And that's 6 to 12 or 13 is a little more manageable. Once you start getting into the older teenagers, that's sort of a different staffing situation, different expectation of activity.
Talk to me a little bit about sports specific activities that you have. You have camps and clinics and leagues, and what age is appropriate for what standard do you refer to determine what age is appropriate, what level of skill or competition is appropriate for these participants?
Yeah, so we just refer to the standards kind of industry wide. So for soccer, for example, we would look at VYSA, the Virginia Youth Soccer Association, and look at their recommendations for everything from age appropriate drills and skill development activity, what size the field should be, what kind of coaching standards there should be, and so that's just one example of one sport. Same thing with the others. Like we would look to the national governing bodies, and we want to be a place where we're holding a high standard. And so when you bring your child, they're getting they're learning the sport at a high level. So we want to also use those governing bodies specific standards when it comes to child care and safety and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about the specifics of some partnerships that you have. One being the Shenandoah Valley United Soccer Club, another being Mavara East. I mean, talk to me about these partnerships and how you work with these groups.
Yeah, so Shenandoah Valley United, which is a local soccer club, is the largest soccer club in the valley. It's been a partner since before the building was actually open, and remains a partner for us when it comes to youth soccer. And so getting back to kind of how we maintain the facility right there, the expectation is that we're going to keep the fields and the turf and those kind of things in good shape, and we're going to keep those safe environments, and they handle more of the management and the registrations and those sort of things, and of course the coaching. But we work together, making sure the coaches are appropriately trained and they've been background checked and those kind of things. We can assist them in those areas. With Movara, you refer to, that's an on-campus program, right? That's actually overnight guests that participate in a nutrition and healthier lifestyle curriculum, but they actually stay for a minimum of a week. So there's a whole another set of things that can happen when you have overnight guests that we have to be mindful of. And there's shared spaces there too that they use. Our fitness center that's in the edge, so we have to make sure that we're keeping that for them, for them to be able to use and not have interruption and those kind of things, and to make sure those spaces are clean and safe for them. Then another one too that we're recently engaging with is Vail, so Virginia Adult Independent Living. So the wheelchair basketball team will call Horizons Edge, the Harrisonburg wheelchair basketball team will call Horizons Edge home here starting this week, actually. So, that's a different, obviously that's, comes with making sure we have ample handicap parking and egress and getting into the building and access to their court and their equipment, is vital for them. So we've had to take some steps to make sure that that's done properly.
It sounds like a clear agreement with these partnerships is critical to know who's responsible for what and what access these groups have.
Right. A lot of MOUs back and forth.
Sounds good. So wheelchair basketball, that sounds like an exciting endeavor. How do you identify these partners and how do you decide if they're a good fit for your organization?
Yeah. So with the wheelchair basketball team, we had we received a kind of an event inquiry from the National Wheelchair Basketball Association about having one of their national or regional events at the facility. So through that process, me wanting to learn more about hosting that particular sport, because it's something we hadn't done before, I reached out to the local wheelchair basketball team and just, can you guys help me understand what it's going to take to host an event like this? And then as we got to talking, we were just like, and they needed space. It was a situation where they weren't going to be able to use the local Parks and Rec facilities much longer. So we decided we would, step up and help them out.
That's amazing. So you're providing a space and opportunity for a team just at a time where their need was existed. And so that sounds like an interesting endeavor. Let's shift gears just another time here. And you do have the ability to sell alcohol in your facility, which enhances what types of events you can put on and host. But there are inherent risks associated with alcohol and being
Sure.
licensed to sell and distribute. So talk to me about some of the challenges that come with that, and what's the reason why your Sportsplex chooses to sell alcohol?
Yeah, so there's we have to go through the ABC licensing, and then we have to have a manager on duty. Has to be someone that has been trained and is there to make sure that we're appropriately selling the alcohol and make sure we're following the standards, checking IDs, things like that. And there's drink limits and places that they can go within the building with their alcohol. There's limits to that as well. That some we've imposed, some that are just imposed through the license. Ours is beer and wine, no hard liquor. And we chose to do it because we do a lot of, and majority is youth sports and adult leagues and those kind of things. And there's the factor of after a youth league game, of course, people like to hang out and just hang out with friends, and that's part of the social piece. But we also do a lot of banquets and other corporate events that those type events prefer a venue that would be able to supply them with alcohol for the evening. So it was just it was a necessary thing that we needed to do in order to be a complete event, conference, and sports venue. And so, knowing what we were getting into and just following those standards of service.
Have you had any issues with impairment or minors trying to get access to alcohol? Any kind of those sort of issues?
Yeah. So the actual only impairment issue that I can remember that we faced is someone came to the facility already under the influence. So we had to just kind of handle that gently, and then calling them a way to get back home safely and things like that. But we have had we under constant training with our staff about how to go about the ID and checking ID process, and we've had their sting operations with the Virginia ABC to try and make sure that we're following those procedures. So we've tried to be careful about that sort of thing, and we've had the sting operation come in and we've passed most of the time.
There's some
we won't get too deep into that, but
challenges.
we've had one instance where we didn't do things correctly, and so we've kind of reassessed our training and making sure it's appropriate, making sure that we're, so we've taken the steps to make sure that something like that shouldn't happen again.
Yeah, it's a learning opportunity and helps you pivot your training. Let's talk more about training of your staff. So alcohol training is important. Tell me about, any kind of medical training that's necessary, any kind of policies and procedure training, safety training. Talk to me a little bit. What kind of training does your staff go through?
So there's several aspects of that. When we go through the hiring process, we have on all of our job descriptions that we prefer that the person be CPR and first aid certified, right? So you don't necessarily have to have it when you're hired. We try to get you to get it within 3 to 6 months of being hired. We always have someone in the building, or if not multiple people, including an athletic trainer at times, that are certified in those emergency procedures should we need that, right? Including AED. The other ways that we go through training is we have a rock climbing wall or clip and climb, right? So we have specific training on how to properly harness someone, how to properly clip them in. If they get, sometimes the kids just get scared up on the wall, and there's proper ways to rescue, what we call rescues. So we go through all of those trainings. There's several levels. There's a minimum amount of training you can have to go and clip someone into the walls, and there's also a next level that allows you to be the person that's doing the rescues, right? So there's always someone in the building certified in that. There's always a manager on duty that's gone through the alcohol training, like you said, that is a ABC manager on duty. So there's other just general emergency action plans. So through our training and onboarding process, we go through all of those type procedures, and then as follow-ups, as a matter of fact, we have one this Friday, a large staff meeting where we'll go through. Actually, we'll do social media expectations this Friday, but we try and take something every time we have a staff meeting, because I had mentioned earlier to you when we were prepping for the show that one of our internal kind of values is safety to begin with. So when we do our staff meetings, we use our values to kind of set the agenda. So safety is always a part, and sometimes it's HR related, sometimes it's physical training in the building, or how to properly clean something or prepare a meal in the cafe, and those kind of things.
I would imagine it might be difficult to schedule people for training or to get everyone in for training when they have people working different shifts, some part-time, some temporary, some seasonal. And so how do you manage the training when you have employees working at different hours, different times?
Yeah, so this is a constant conversation and constant evolution of how we do it, to be honest. And I don't know that we have found quite the silver bullet yet, but it depends on the training. Some things are kind of in the moment. You learn as you go, like a point of sale. It's much easier if you're just kind of have someone over your shoulder and helping you ring customers up in the moment once you've kind of gotten the basic trainings. When it comes to safety pieces, trying to have fire alarm or fire drills, or some sort of going through the process of someone has a concussion, how do we respond to that? Or someone is down on court 4, how do you respond to that? Those kind of things. And just doing those live kind of drills is how we try to approach it. And you're right, it's hard to get everyone in the room at the same time. It's hard to cover everything, even in a short amount of time that sometimes we have. So there are times carved out and days carved out throughout the year where we'll just take a half day and just focus on that. And then, everybody get together for pizza or whatever afterwards, trying to make it fun. But
I want to know more about the social media policy training you have coming up on Friday. What are some tips that you could share with our viewers that you are going to be sharing with your staff on Friday?
Yeah, so it's a little different than like marketing standards, right? They want to have specific. The graphics need to be within our brand standards and things like that, and you don't use certain wording and that kind of stuff. That's separate from what we're going over on Friday. What we're going to cover Friday is really an HR policy, but it's how we engage, because we have teenagers, and we have young adults that might reach out to our staff and want to be friends with them on different social media platforms. So it's more of a heads up of how to handle those situations and not not get ourselves into any kind of trouble there.
So maybe not befriending people on social media. Is that the recommendation?
I'm sure it will be. I'm going through the training just like everyone else. So.
All right. Looking forward to hearing back from you on that one. Talk to me about any future plans you might have to enhance safety and provide a high quality customer experience. What do you see in the future, and what are some maybe trends that are impacting you or shaping the way you're envisioning the future for Horizons Edge Sports Campus?
Yeah, so I think, we're always trying to be creative with new programs and what we're offering from a programmatic standpoint, right? Keeping up with what's popular, like pickleball or something like that here most recently. One of the things I think physical plant wise that we'll look to, or capital improvement, would be our parking. And so adding additional parking and adding, making sure it's more lights out there in some of the areas that are away from, we're looking at a picture of the front door. So there's parking that's proximal to the building that's well lit and more than safe. But then there's other areas that we have to use for overflow that need a little bit more illumination, and also just probably needs to be looked at to be paved so that it's solid footing for our and then sidewalks that lead them from those areas into our building so that it's just a better environment for the customer.
Are there any industry trends or policies that are kind of coming down the pipe that might pivot the way you support the teams and the groups that come and use your facility, or that may change the way your operations take place?
Yeah, so we're part of a network of facilities throughout the country, sports facility companies, and they have a management division that helps us keep up with those trends and the way people are doing things from safety and programs and all of that. I actually have this year's conference is this weekend. So if there are any industry changes and trends that are coming up and coming down the pike, I'll certainly learn about those. I'm not aware of any that are major changes other than some of the stuff that we talked about earlier with our own state and their expectations for hosting camps.
Well, I'm sure it helps to be a part of a national group that kind of helps you keep on the forefront of those conversations. What else can you tell us regarding the unique challenges for operating a sportsplex?
Yeah, I think that what we try to do is we keep incident reports as far just internal, so that we know and that we can look at our own trends within our own facility and see, like, if there is if a lot of those incident reports come back for similar issues in a similar space, then maybe there's something we need to change in that space. If it's a certain activity, then maybe that's not an activity that we want to continue to pursue unless we make some changes to the way that's managed or the way that's played or the way it's officiated. So I would recommend any facility just to keep up their own documentation. We kind of have a rule where that's never a goal of ours to reduce the number of incident reports. We want to make things. I mean, our goal is always to keep the facility as safe as possible. We don't want the staff to feel like they shouldn't report when there's something that's happened, whether it's a fight or a missed spill that someone slipped on. So that always helps us helps us manage how we train and just making sure that we're paying attention to potential risks.
Well, Ray, thanks for sharing your expertise and how you've navigated these few years of Horizons Edge Sports Campus being in operation. So appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So thank you very much to our viewers for joining us today on the Sports Playbook. We will see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.